Today on the Mr. Maple podcast, Matt and Tim count down the top 50 pink maples, numbers 50 through 26.
Hey guys, welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. I'm Matt. We're the only weekly Japanese maple talk show on the internet. We greatly appreciate you guys coming by and being a part of it. We put out new episodes weekly.
Hey guys, I'm Tim. We're MrMaple.com. We're the brothers of Mr. Maple. We're a small family business. We do over 1,000 varieties of Japanese maples, and we ship directly to your door. And we work hard each and every day putting out videos on YouTube and weekly on a podcast. So make sure to support us by shopping on MrMaple.com.
Now, guys, there's two different ways to find our podcast. You're probably already listening to us on one, but we put these out at 8 p.m. on Sundays in video format on YouTube under the name Mr. Maple Show. You can also find us on any major podcast platforms, and make sure to rate us 5 stars there under the Mr. Maple Show. So we do a ton of different types of things here on our show. One thing we like to do is interviews. Sometimes we like to do some interesting countdowns. Today, we're going to be getting into our top 50. We're going to break down just half that list today, but our top 50 pink Japanese maples.
I know the ladies out there love the color pink. I know your wife, Amy, she uses pink everything. My wife, she's got a pink tool set. And pink isn't something that just has to be something ladies love. I mean, pink really gives a lot of good color out there in the landscape. And there's some outrageous colors that you can get on Japanese maples in those true and really awesome pink colors.
Hey now, my manhood isn't threatened by no pink Japanese maple. I love me some pink Japanese maples. In fact, some of the trees on this list are my very favorite Japanese maples, and I think some of the flashiest trees you can be putting into your garden and landscape.
Yeah, the color pink is pretty amazing. And there's so many different shades of pink. That's why this 50 list of pink Japanese maples or pink maples was so fun to put together, because there's so many different shades of pink whenever we're coming down this list that are just simply outrageous.
Now, one of our disqualifiers here, it's always, there's many different things you can use to determine your list. So some of these things are our favorites, but what we tried to look at, which was our main categorization for this, is the things that are the most pink. So the things that are the most truly pink in the Japanese maple world. So there may be a cultivar I like more than another on this list, but it wasn't more pink than the next on the list. So, you'll find some things on this items. You'll say, wow, I can't believe that wasn't Matt's favorite. This is our favorite truly pink Japanese maples.
Yeah, this is a ranking of pinkness, right, not necessarily our favorite.
Well, they are our favorite pinkness.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So these are the best for truly pink Japanese maples. All right, let's get into it, guys. At number 50, Tyler Hansborough, we've got Gables Glory.
Gables Glory is a selection by Larry Gable, and it has that pink-red color to the foliage. It's really unusual because that pink-red color is not your typical red color. I mean, it really puts on some really nice pink reds over top of that, but it does fade to more of a yellow with that pink red new growth coming across it throughout most of the summer.
Right. I love this plant. It could easily be higher on a list of some of my favorite Japanese maples. Probably one of the reasons it's this low is because this one's called the chameleon maple. It changes a ton of colors, guys. It's one that's not always pink. It changes, it fades to gold, it fades to some insane shades of orange. So you can get all kinds of colors going on within this one plant. But at one stage, it's about as pink as you can get.
And it is more of, like Matt said, more of a chameleon maple. It keeps changing, but it has a glowing effect as it's changing. Like the tree itself looks like a crazy color you've never seen before. And that's one of the reasons I love Gables Glory. Matt and I got Gables Glory years ago from Del Laux. We got it at the same time we got Lily Ann's Jewel and really got that into the nursery trade. And Gables Glory is one of those plants that just stood out to us as something uniquely different that needed to be produced more and more into the nursery trade. And I'm so glad we've been able to offer it more and more here on Mr. Maple.
Yeah, it was a tree we probably first got introduced to by Del Laux and Jonathan Savage, maybe back in 2009. And I remember them specifically saying, like, the craziest thing out was Lillian's Jewel. We went to get that. And I remember them saying, do you have this? Well, you've got to be growing this. It's crazy. Check this out. And I've had years where it leafed out, neon orange with pink overlays, faded to pink, and then went gold. So you can get some crazy habits on this one. It is a tree that changes a good bit. Like I said, it would be higher on my list if I was going with favorites, but does have one stage where it is distinctly a really like almost a hot pink color. Got to be on our list of top pink cultivars.
Guys, coming in at number 49. 49 on the top pink cultivars of maples is Acer palmatum dissectum Irish lace. Not to be confused with the Japonicum selection that Billy Schwartz introduced. The dissectum selection called Irish lace, which is a palmatum, can really give you some really nice pink hues whenever you grow it with some sunlight.
Yeah, you would think Irish lace should be green, right? But it leaves out with some incredible shades of hot to soft pink. It is a really showy plant. I'm a huge fan of what this brings to the table. Now, this does fade to more of a Kelly green midsummer. So this tree leaves out that super hot pink, and then it does fade to more of a green. But that spring pink can be, one of the best lace leaf pinks you've ever seen.
And the fall colors of a bright orange. I mean, Irish lace really goes through the colors, but that spring pink, make sure you give it sunlight though. If you're growing this in more shaded situation, you're not going to get the same hot pink colors that you can get with Irish lace in the sunlight. But it has a really nice weeping habit. It's one you don't see that common in the nursery trade, but it is a very colorful and a very pink lace leaf.
Huge fan of that one. And again, not to be confused with the Japonicum cultivar. There are two Japanese maples by the same name, one Acer Japonicum and one Acer palmatum dissectum. The Acer palmatum dissectum, that's where you look for your pink. That's a beautiful pink lace leaf. Now, coming in at number 48, we've got Wilson's Pink.
Yeah, Wilson's Pink Dwarf is an awesome, awesome upright Japanese maple that leaves out in the spring with some really nice pink color. And that pink color can range from a hot pink to a coral pink. And really gives you some amazing spring interest. It's one of those flowering Japanese maples that's just as, the azaleas and these other things are blooming. It comes out with the blooms itself, which are really more, the foliage really acts as the blooms and giving you some awesome pink interest in the springtime. One of the first harbingers of spring, Wilson's Pink Dwarf.
This one makes a great accompaniment to many of those other spring splashes like Katsura and Ueno-yama. It's going to bring that high intensity pink. I often like to think about it in a similar fashion to something like Katsura, if you're familiar, because that one's going to hold that spring splash. It will green up some midsummer. Again, this one's going to work zones 5 through 9. We do list it as a dwarf because it's often referred to as Wilson's Pink Dwarf. You'll see it sometimes sold as Wilson's Pink. Typically, this tree is about 6 to 8 feet in 10 years. So kind of on that upper scale for a dwarf. It is a little bit large, in my opinion, for considering it a truly dwarf Japanese maple. But the colors are amazing on this one. Again, one of the tricks for the best color on this one is a little bit of early morning sun and late day shade. That'll help you prolong that high intensity of Wilson's Pink later into the season. And leafing it out slowly can often give it some of the most electric shades of pink.
Guys, coming in at number 47, we've got Acer palmatum dissectum Otto's dissectum. And this is a selection from the Henderson Experimental Gardens in California that was selected by Otto. And this thing really can give you some pink-purple colors on the new growth.
I got no idea who Otto is, but dude had a heck of a dissectum. This thing leaves out, again, a very intense pink. I really like the shades it has. It really kind of, for lack of a better term, blushes. So it's a green Japanese maple for all intensive purposes, but it has a unique blushing, a splash of pink going on top of that green. So you're going to get green undertones, and it looks like the pink's just hovering on this plant. Really showy plant. It was actually a selection made for its heat tolerance. So not only is this an extremely dwarf tree, it is excellent for its durability and heat tolerance. Typically reaching around 4 foot tall by 5 foot wide in 10 years. Now, if you're new to Mr. Maple, we always give you a time frame for heights. We always try to explain, a time frame. I think at maturity is a disingenuous size range. So we always try to give you a time frame because a grafted, healthy Japanese maple will outlive us all.
When Matt and I were visiting Balzer Nursery, we had the knowledge ahead of time that Balzer had introduced so many amazing plants, but he also had the selection Otto's dissectum, one of the original ones from the Henderson Experimental Gardens. And so we got to go see Otto's dissectum at Balzer Nursery. And Balzer Nursery introduced some awesome plants like Alpenwise and Nanyat and some really cool plants. And just found some awesome plants. And Otto's dissectum really made it in the nursery trade a lot through Balzer Nursery.
All right, guys, coming in here at number 46, we've got Acer palmatum uzinishki. Now, this one could easily be higher on a list of favorites for me. I love this plant. I think it's one of my favorite and one of the most exaggerated forms of an uzinishki. Now, probably one of the only reasons this isn't even higher up on our list is it's so variegated that it's almost more white than pink, but it certainly has some crazy pink undertones.
Yeah, this is a selection Matt and I saw years ago on Facebook in a Taiwanese Japanese maple group. And we fell in love with it. And we were like, that is a cultivar we've got to get into the nursery trade. And we were so excited when we finally got uzinishki and started getting in production. And now a lot of other nurseries have started being able to, since we've sold many of them, started to get them more and more available in the United States. But I mean, this is an amazingly variegated plant, but it's not as pink as some of the others. And that's the reason it's so high on the list at 45. It's not all the way down much lower, is because that pink, it's pinks and whites and
it's
purple
got so
tippings.
many colors going
exactly.
on.
It's got an
And
awesome
there's
color.
green going on. There's a border at one point. I like to think of this one, uzinishki, as almost more of an ukigumo x uzinishki. It kind of has some of the things I like about both. I mean, I don't know if it's truly a sand dusting variegation, but it certainly has elements of that in the way it looks. And it kind of feels like you combined ukigumo and urinano. I love what it brings to the table. It can be distinctly bright white. It can have some shades of green, but that pink overlay and that purple overlay make it so colorful. Had to be on our list for pink Japanese maples.
Coming in at number 45, we've got Olson's Frosted Strawberry. Harry Olson introduced a lot of amazing plants, including HO43, which became Dragon King, and so many other unique seedlings that he introduced through the nursery trade, often coming through his cousin, Del Laux. And there were so many awesome plants there, but Olson's Frosted Strawberry bears his name. And it really does look like a frosted strawberry. It can give you some really nice pink purple hues on this thing. Some pink red hues on a slower growing reticulated Japanese maple.
Guys, great color pattern to this one. We do list this one as 6 through 8, so a little more tender for a zone 5. An amazing pink Japanese maple, though. Actually was named by Del Laux for his cousin Olson. And that was a seedling that Olson had selected, but never truly got into the trade. Del picked it up and said, hey, this is amazing. We got to get it out there. An amazing treat. A little bit smaller than most of those reticulated forms, too. We list this one at 6 to 8 foot in a 10 to 15 year period. So a little bit smaller and more compact. Also a little bit more irregular growth. So it does tend to have more width to it than a lot of the other reticulated ghost type maples.
Yeah, and Olson, he did a lot of that. He had a lot of evaluation seedlings. In fact, some of our trees that we've introduced, like Magic Moon, were originally Olson seedlings that we were able to get a hold of. And we traded with Del Laux' grandson, Jonathan Savlich, to get some of these cool plants like Strawberry Fields and Magic Moon. So some awesome plants that came out of those experimental gardens at Olson's place. I mean, he really had an eye for selecting Japanese maples.
And some just killer genetics going on there. I mean, holy cow, they had so many good plants. A lot of the introductions that became Del and Olson came from those similar sets of genetics. Now, guys, coming in here at number 44, we've got Acer palmatum Firefly. Now, Firefly is one we named here at our nursery. Full disclosure, if you listen to our other podcast, this is one of my favorite variegated maples ever. Maybe my favorite reticulated form of all time. And we had to have it on this list of pinks. It goes through so many crazy color changes that at one stage it's highly intensely pink, but it's easily debatable what color this tree is. I mean, it goes through some shades of lavenders, intense purples, intense lime greens, but it does kind of overblush this intense pink color as well.
Yeah, in the springtime when it's leafing out with the pink reticulated variegation with some pink purples, and then the leaf being kind of pink with the green veining, it's a rock star. During the summer flushes, it can be a little greener sometimes with more of a purple border, but it's constantly changing. And that's one of the reasons, even though it's one of our favorites that fell so low down at 44, is because the color's always changing on it.
Oh, it turns purple.
It's one of the reasons I love it, but it may not be the pinkest Japanese maple on this list because of that.
Yeah, it had to be on the list, but get your cameras out because it changes constantly. I mean, what's pink this week may be intensely purple the next week. Now, that one's going to reach about 10 to 12 foot in a 10-year period, so a great grower as well. But one thing I like a lot about Firefly that may not be known is it tends to be very columnar. So a lot of that branching is aimed upward, giving it a much more narrow approach.
Now, while we named Firefly, we didn't actually find it. We actually were growing it from another nursery, and it had the name Moonfire on it. Matt and I were like, what in the world is this? Well, this must be a mislabeled tree. And we sat it out and compared it to all the other reticulated Japanese maples and realized it was very different, and it was even better. And then when we contacted that nursery, they said, oh, no, this is a seedling we found. Was a seedling. It wasn't a mislabeled tree. We called it Moonfire. And they didn't realize there was another cultivar out there called Moonfire. So we took that fire and we said, would you mind if we called it Firefly? And they were all about it. And Firefly has been an awesome tree. That's been one of our most popular trees. We've been trying to make it available as much as possible now here on Mr. Maple.
All right, guys, coming in here at number 43, we've got Acer Palmatum Rainbow.
I remember our first trip to Oregon, and we went and I got Talon Buchholz to sign his poster. And while we were visiting Talon's nursery, he had Rainbow there on one of the tables. And it was like one of his cool, amazing, new, neat things. And everybody walked by and were in awe of it because it had that red foliage with that bright, bright pink variegation.
Yeah, this is one of the most intense for that, bright pink on dark red colorations. Now, we always let people know with this one, you need to prune Rainbow for its color, not for its shape. So you want to take out any all dark red in that tree so it doesn't revert, because Rainbow is one that can revert. But it is a gorgeous tree, especially when maintained. It can be one of the showiest trees in the entire trade. And with a little bit of sunlight, you can actually get this one to be one of the more bright shades of hot pink with dark red.
Yeah, I mean, this plant is one of the more outstandingly beautiful Japanese maples that's out there on the market. The contrast between the light pink, that baby pink, that pink color, and the dark red foliage is outstanding. And it's one of those plants that is just a rock star whenever it comes to grabbing your attention in the garden. I mean, anyone who loves pink is going to see this tree and say, I want that, because sometimes you may even get foliage that's completely pink. Every single leaf could be pink on some of the new growth flushes. But if you ever get any of that solid red new growth, make sure to prune it out if it doesn't have variegation. It is a little more unstably variegated Japanese maple than some of the others like Lily and Jewel.
Yeah, great tree to be growing though. Typically at around a foot of growth a year. Just remember to watch out for the all one color foliage, and you've got a showstopper there in the garden.
So guys, coming at number 42, we've got Acer Palmatum Coral Magic.
Now, I love this one again for its spring interest. This is a high intensity spring interest. I think many of these are kind of overlooked in the bonsai trade as well. I mean, this brings every bit the pizzazz that like Shindasojo or Desojo bring. I get people all the time that are after Bini Shidori, and we will be working on that one. But Coral Magic, that's a great one for a bonsai person. It's got small leaves. It's got everything you love about Desojo, but in more of a pink undertone to it. You can actually get some yellows to the bottom of the leaf. As it matures to the lobes, you get even more bright, bright pink. Now, this is a great mid-sized tree at like 6x6, even in 15 years. So it does tend to be more of a width tree and not a lot of height going on. It tends to be more of a rounded canopy to it. But it's a spectacular tree.
Now, it does give more of that coral pink color. And it's pretty consistent on giving more of that coral pink, where Wilson's pink can sometimes get some of that pink.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's more coral pink. This one is more consistently on that coral pink side of things. And that's the reason it gets its name, the Coral Magic, because of that orangey pink color that is really different. I mean, you don't get that on many Japanese maples. And on the springtime when this tree's leafing out, like Matt said, it's very much like a Desojo version, but with more of that coral pink color.
Yeah, I like this one a lot, guys. It can bring a lot to that spring landscape for sure. It does fade to more of a light green to mint green midsummer. Really showy though. Excellent small plant for container gardens or in the landscape. Confuses some people because immediately, especially new people to Japanese maples, they hear coral and they think coral bark. So this one isn't a bark interest like Sengukaku. It's more the coral pink for the color. All right, guys, coming in here at number 41, we've got Acer Palmatum, Jerry Schwartz.
And this one has such a unique color. I mean, it's best described as a pink, but it could be more of an orange pink to more of a purple pink. I mean, it's got such a unique color on the spring interest on Jerry Schwartz that grabs your attention. But it's a shade of pink that is almost unlike any other Japanese maple.
So Jerry Schwartz is a witch's broom named by Billy Schwartz for his mother. Now, we actually had Billy visit in the nursery here this last weekend, and he is a trip. If you haven't already, definitely do yourself a favor and listen to our podcast where we interview Billy Schwartz. He's an expert on all things witches' brooms and Japanese maples, and he'll tell you such as well. He's a hilarious guy, really interesting man. I would say Jerry Schwartz may be one of his most famous introductions. I mean, Shayna's right there with it for fame for him, but Jerry Schwartz, I've seen that in garden centers in Belgium and all around the world. I like it because it's a broom, but it's also a short columnar broom, being that it's about 6 foot by about 4 foot wide in 15 years.
I would actually argue that Jerry Schwartz isn't popular enough, even though it's one of his most popular introductions behind Shayna. Jerry Schwartz, the color on it is unreal. Its usability, like you talked about it being narrow, it can be used in so many places.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that this thing can contrast so well in the landscape with so many other Japanese maples, more people need to be using this in their garden because this thing gives unreal colors. It's pretty easy to grow, and that tight, compact habit with that narrow form makes this tree a rock star in anybody's garden and landscape.
Yeah, now it's going to leaf out more of a bright, true pink, and that's really where it gets on this list is that bright pink when it first hits. That fades to kind of a light red, which fades to kind of a light, kind of almost, darkish emeraldy green. And you can get some shades of pink over top of that, which really are interesting, especially on the new growth. It makes a nice contrast even within the plant.
Yeah, and some of the summer colors of like that pink bronze kind of color, where it's bronze, but it's more on the pink spectrum of bronze, is unreal. And it grabs your attention even in the summer months. And I think we need more plants like that. I think we need more plants that grab your attention in the summer. And Jerry Schwartz is definitely one of those plants that's going to make a statement all throughout the spring, summer, and the fall.
All right, guys, coming in here at number 40, we've got Cades Jackass POTUS. Now, that's a mouthful to say, but it's a heck of a tree.
This is a selection that Dave Vercade found as a chance seedling, and it's really cool. He named it after his daughter, Jackie, and her nickname is Jackass POTUS. And so it became Vercade's Jackass POTUS. But it's a sessilifolium, so it has that angel feather leaf structure, something very similar to like a Hagoromo or Koshimeno or orange Hagoromo or Bini Hagoromo that many people may know. But it has an apricot pink spring color on it. And that's really where it deserves a spot on this list. But it's one of those Japanese maple weirdos that you're going to really enjoy.
Yeah, even after this one kind of fades to a light green, sometimes the petioles will have a distinctive pink coloration to them. It comes out more of almost like a shrimp pink sometimes to apricot. So you get so much crazy contrast going on. Now, we originally got this tree from Dave Vercade himself. Tim and I traveled to Ed Shin's house to one of his annual meetings he used to have back in the day. And I believe we bought, a very, very small liner of this. The tree itself was only about 3 inches tall. We picked this up from him directly. We waited and waited and waited. The original price, I believe, was $150 for the small liner. And at the end of the day, he said, you know what, I'll let you have it for half price. So we bought it for $75. It was a fresh graft that was about three inches tall. And I can't help but remember our friends, Richard Bomar and Mike Wilson, laughed at Tim and I because we held them to this thing like it was the nuclear codes while we drove back from New Jersey. It sat in the cup holder between us. And we were so excited to get this tree out there. And much like Lillian's Jewel was something we kind of pushed out early on, I think we really helped popularize Vercade's Jackass POTUS here at our nursery because it was one of our special things that we maintained and continue to offer back to back to back here at our nursery. And I'm glad that we still offer it today. It's a really fun plant and one that definitely brings the pink to the garden.
Yeah, and where Bini Hagoromo gives you more of the red, this one really gives you more of that apricot pink color. It's not as vigorous as Bini Hagoromo, and it's typically a tree that's going to be more in that 6 to 8 foot range in 10 years, where Bini Hagoromo is going to be much more vigorous and more upright. Vercade's Jackass POTUS is going to eventually get more shrub-like as it ages, but an amazing plant with some amazing color with that unique sessilifolium angel feather leaf structure. So coming in at number 39, we've got Acer palmatum, Sweet Lorraine.
Guys, I'm a huge fan of any lace leaves that are reticulated. These are so interesting. I mean, this one brings it. Not only is it a weeping, umbrella-shaped lace leaf, it's pink and reticulated. So it's just got everything going on for it. Huge fan of this. This was an introduction by our friend Talon Buckholt, so you know his name. So many interesting plants. And this one's just a showstopper.
Yeah, think of it more like Olson frosted strawberry colors with the reticulation and the leaf shape similar to like a filigree, green filigree. This plant is a reticulated lace leaf with that brighter pink color, that pink purple to pink orange color on a weeping lace leaf Japanese maple. There's not many reticulated lace leaf Japanese maples, and Sweet Lorraine does that with this pink color.
Yeah, it's really small too. It's a great one for the container garden. It works really in any setting, but this one's going to look great with some late day shade. It's typically only going to be in that 4 foot range, even in 10 years. 4 foot by 4 foot, or maybe even 4 foot by 5 is kind of one of the sizes you'll see on this one. It's a relatively slow grower, but it really brings the high intensity.
Yeah, it's a really slow grower, great for containers. I mean, the color on this thing is quite unusual and very different. And that's one of the reasons that I like Sweet Lorraine. I like the plants that stand out because they differentiate themselves from all the other cultivars that are out there. And Sweet Lorraine, being that it has all these unique characteristics to it, is definitely one that grabs my attention. But it also fits in small spaces just because it is such a slow grower.
All right, guys, coming in here at number 38, we've got Aka Shikitatsu Sawa.
Yeah, this is the red version of the snipes flying up from the swamp in the morning. Shikitatsu Sawa is one of the plants that's on the 1600s list, and there's a lot of poetry that went with those. And that's what Shikitatsu Sawa is said to have meant. And Aka means deep red. So you get that deep red color, but really it's more of that pink color rather than the deep red that you think of with Aka.
Yeah, it's really showy. This one's going to work zones 5 through 9. You get more whites in the middle of that reticulation. So it kind of has its softest shades in the middle, and especially in the early spring, as you get out further on the leaf, you get more and more of those bright pink tones. It's intensely pink, guys. This one's always popular. Sells out in person anytime we have it in person in early spring. Really nice tree to be growing to at about 8 to 12 foot, even in a 15-year range. So relatively smaller one. Makes a great accompaniment to any of the Ghost series. I think it stands on its own against any of those and bringing its own unique shades to a reticulated Japanese maple as well.
Now, when a tree like this is 8 foot, it may also be 8 foot wide because this thing has got a unique shape in the fact that it grows out while it grows up. And so it has these branches that spread outwards as it's still growing upward. So it is a slower growing reticulated type. But that pink that this gets in, that pink blushes this gets over top of the white, really is something that makes a really nice pink out there in the landscape and garden.
All right, guys, coming in at number 37, we've got Rokukatsunishki.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, this one's intensely pink for sure.
I think this is our first, I guess you would say, uzinishki style variegation in this pink.
I mean, you could count oozing in that category, but yeah, this one's truly more in that distinctive uzinishki style variegation, typically at around 12 foot in 10 years. Rokukatsunishki was introduced in Japan in 1988, and it kind of comes out a little bit more bronzy, developing more pink and white variegation.
This thing's just one of those ones that gives us wicked variegation. I mean, it really just, the new growth flushes in the spring first start out a little greener, but then that secondary flush, when that secondary flush hits, you get some of the craziest variegation on this you get on any Japanese maple with lots of pink variegation, pink and white. And it's one that just grabs your attention, especially in those summer months or that late spring when you're getting that secondary flush of growth. That's when this tree is at its pinkest.
Now, we did a demo on our YouTube channel explaining how to prune this style Japanese maple for even more variegation. One thing I like to add about this style variegation is that it's so prevalent. The chimeral variegation that's within the bark is so strong that you often get pink and white swirling even within the bark of this tree. So really interesting characteristic. It's kind of got that candy caning swirling going on within the bark, especially young plants that are trimmed back that have a high level of variegation to them. So you're going to get such an intense push by lightly pruning this style. It's one that doesn't revert. So that's a good quality to have and something this pink. Love this tree for what it brings to the table. Again, light pruning right before they leaf out can even intensify the pink on this one.
Guys, coming at number 36, we've got one of the new ghosts. We've got Acer palmatum pastel.
Yeah, so this was another introduction by our friend and mentor, Talon Buchholz. Really exceptional plant. Pastel brings it with the pastel colors. I mean, if you give this one some sun in the early spring, it can just get incredible colors to it. I've had it be neon hot pink to almost orange pink. So you can get some really weird shades going on. If you're growing this one in more of a shady condition, it will truly be pastel. You'll get kind of almost a white with soft pink edges to it.
And that's one of the things about this tree is it really gives you those soft pinks out there in the landscape and garden. Even when this tree is just leafing out, new growth flushes, you can get some nice pinks on it. And really on more on that pastel pink color. I mean, think of almost like an amber ghost style, but more pastel pink. And the name fits it so perfectly because you get the pastel pinks to when it fades to more of those pastel creams. As a reticulated Japanese maple, you can really see the etching of the veins in this selection. It's one of the newer selections of ghosts. You heard me mention that it was a new ghost. That means it has that reticulated style selection. It was introduced by Talon Buchholz, but it was after he had already introduced the Ghost series, and he quit putting the name Ghost on many of his new selections.
Great plant, highly sought after. Definitely recommend picking that one up when you see it. All right, so coming in here at number 35, guys, we've got In the Pink.
Guys, sometimes this one's known under the name as Rustling in the Pink. It's a more compact dwarf selection that really gives you some nice pink-red colors on a dwarf Japanese maple. It has a very compact habit, meaning it's great for containers, great for small spaces in the garden. It was a selection by Russell Nursery that was in New York, and they introduced some conifers and some other cool plants. But in the maple world, this was their pride and joy, Acer palmatum in the pink.
Beautiful plant. Now, this one is a great accompaniment to anywhere you want a dwarf Japanese maple, but you want that high intensity of pink. This one looks amazing in a conifer garden or anywhere you're trying to add some, really unique diversity. It is a small, compact tree. I like the way this one grows. It reminds me a little bit of something like Rhode Island Red and its density and how full it gets. Makes a great accompaniment to any of the other dwarf Japanese maples. And, that spring color of the pink is awesome, especially on that larger leaf.
Guys, coming in at number 34, we've got Acer palmatum Suru no Mei. And think of an uzinishki that has more pink to it.
Right.
I mean, it has less of the purple borders that the uzinishki has, less of the malting white, but a lot more pink variegation in the leaf itself.
This one can get so funky. I mean, it's crazy. There's a lot of swirling going on. Every leaf shape is a little bit irregular, and you just get so high intensity on those colors. I mean, maybe it's the irregularity of the leaf shape or the shape, the swirling it gets, but it just seems more intense than a lot of the other pinks. You get so much going on in this one. The fall colors can range from golden oranges to reds, and you get a little bit of diversity of color there between the pink and the green and the white. But the pink is really the most prominent color on this one. You get so much of that going on in this one. And it's a great mid-sized tree at around 8 feet and 10 years. Another of that uzinishki style, so lightly pruning this can even more intensify the pink coloration on that. Another great quality is, this style variegation doesn't revert. So again, another one in that style, but amazing tree. I think my main thing I like about this one is how irregular the leaf is, though. I think that even adds to its high drama and intensity.
And one of the reasons why I describe this one as a uzinishki with more pink is because uzinishki and Suru no Mei both have heavily serrated edges, which help distinguish them from the other types in that uzinishki family. They have very similar variegation types as some of those types, and they're very consistent in their variegation where they don't revert. But their serrated edgings give their leaf a little bit something different that helps them stand out from any of the other variegated Japanese maples.
All right, guys, coming in here at number 33, we've got Acer palmatum Kurohime. Now, this is dark red or black princess. It's one of the darkest, but you get some incredible shades of pink on this, especially in the summer months. One of my favorite times of the year for this one is almost June, July here in the mountains of western North Carolina. You get some greener, older growths that are a very unique green amongst maples. I mean, they're almost like a light emeraldy green, but you get some high intensity shrimp pink color going on. in that summer months on top of Kurohime.
And I like it actually when it first leaves out.
Mhm.
I mean, when this tree first leaves out, the entire tree can be more of a pink to coral pink when it's very first leafing out before it starts fading to some of those blue greens that Matt's talking about. And it starts getting later on in the season. So the spring color's got some amazing pinks. The summer color's got some amazing pinks. And this one can really give you some nice shades of pink orange in the fall. So Kurohime, which some people translate as being black princess because it's more of that black red whenever it's talked about Kuro and Hime meaning dwarf or princess in Japanese. This plant is an amazing plant. And it's a Japanese maple that is very unique and very different. It was brought into the United States around 2008 from Japan. I remember when this tree was one of the coolest trees that had all the hype in 2008. And it still is an amazing tree that stands out from many of the other types today.
Oh yeah, this fits in so well, guys, with any of the other Hime forms. At 4 to 5 foot in 10 years, this is another true dwarf that's going to have high intensity. Would make a fun bonsai. If you're into that kind of thing and you want to develop a bonsai that's got a lot of colors, this would fit great with your Murasaki Kiyohimes and Kashima Yatsubusas because of that density of habit. Now, this one tends to be a small, kind of globular shape. Would look great in a patio planter as well because of that high drama and small shape. If you have this one in some early morning sun, I find that you can even electrify those pinks, especially on that secondary flush in the summer, a little bit harder. Fall colors can be quite nice too. You can get some yellows and some oranges going on there. Had some darker reds as well. Truly a colorful plant no matter what season you're looking at it in. And Kurohime, got to be on our top pinks list.
And one of the reasons I like Kurohime too is it's a dwarf, it's compact, but unlike many of the types that are compact through being a witch's broom or having a lot of lateral growth, Kurohime is upright in its habit. And because of that, it gives a very distinct, upright, compact shape that grabs your attention and displays that pink color during the summer months so well.
All right, guys, coming in here at number 32, we've got Bini Tsukasa.
Guys, Bini Tsukasa is a selection by our good friend Yutaka Tanaka at Tsukasa Maple in Japan. Now, Yutaka Tanaka has many different awesome selections. And a lot of them are pink. So we'll definitely have some other selections.
He likes the pink.
He does. And he's got more coming on this list that we'll be talking about later. But Bini Tsukasa, Bini means that sort of red color, that sort of pink color. I mean, there's no real color for pink in Japanese, but when you often see that Bini, that often describes the shade of red that people often in America associate with pink. And Bini Tsukasa in the springtime is a flowering shrub type that can really give you some amazing pink colors.
Yeah, this one is 8 to 10 foot in that 15-year span. So even one of the more smaller ones, it's in that Corallinum group. So you're going to get that high intensity coloration, especially in the early spring. I think one of the things that sets this one apart is it kind of has some undertones of yellow in it as well. And that soft creaminess really adds to the vibrancy of the pink. So those undertones of yellow and kind of a creamy mix really make the pink shade stand out even more intensely. I'm a huge fan of what this one does. It's a beautiful tree. I have one in my own landscape. It makes such a good contrast with a lot of those other spring splashes too. You know, these are those trees that are going to be showing out when the cherries are blooming. These are those trees that are going to compete with the Katsuras and the Ueno Yamas for that spring interest. And it's a high intensity pink that I think you should add to your garden for sure.
I first fell in love with Bini Tsukasa at a local community college. Our local community college had a horticulture program that was associated with some nurseries in town. And they had a Bini Tsukasa by the side of their one of their horticulture buildings. Unfortunately, later someone didn't realize its importance and how awesome this tree was. And they put some big propane tanks in there that they probably needed for some other purpose. And they took out the Bini Tsukasa, and my heart just dropped seeing that they'd taken out a Bini Tsukasa that probably had a caliper of, close to a foot in its caliper, a really old Bini Tsukasa. I mean, this is an older cultivar by Tsukasa Maple in Japan. An awesome plant, though, that really needs more people to grow it because this thing is pretty amazing.
All right, guys, coming in here at number 31, we've got Ruby de Sophia.
Guys, Ruby de Sophia, it's everything we talked about with pastel. It's got those pastel colors to it. It's got the pastel pinks that leaf out in the spring. then going to pastel whites with pastel pinks again during the summer. But then we have this really unique shape. And the shape is what makes this plant. It has these interesting knuckles where it sort of twists and contorts off the main leader. And it gives this tree almost like a weeping habit with a contortion that is really special and unique for any Japanese maple, let alone one that's pink.
Guys, it's a cool color. I mean, the color stands alone. It's on our list for that, obviously being that it has so many pink shades. But I think what really makes this one special is that contorted, weird kind of corkscrew habit. It ends up with some very irregular shapes. I don't think any two Ruby de Sophias are going to look exactly alike because it tends to fill out in all directions and make kind of a really unique overall habit. Typically at around 6 to 8 foot, even in 10 years. Expect some diversity in branching, though. Your branching may look a little irregular to some American eyes. I think sometimes we overlook that in what we want in a Japanese maple when we look for cookie cutter shapes. And in Japan, the uniqueness of each individual tree is celebrated. And Ruby de Sophia is going to give you the uniqueness. This is one that's not going to look cookie cutter and uniform in its design. It's an irregular style growth, but it's one that brings a very subtle beauty to it, especially with that pink coloration.
And I think that's why people often think of a Japanese maple and then they want to grow them as a street tree. And I think they're doing it completely wrong. I think if you're growing a Japanese maple, you should celebrate what makes that tree amazingly different than all the other trees. And often it's the ununiform shape the Japanese maple makes that still has a more uniform shape overall that is just so pleasing to the eye, so pleasing to look at that you're like, that deserves a place in my garden. And Ruby de Sophia is definitely one of those plants that'll do all of that. And it does it in such a unique way with some good pink color. So guys, coming in at number 30, we've got Acer palmatum pink filigree.
So this was a highly intense pink. According to J.D. Vertrees, who wrote the book on Japanese maples, pink filigree may be a cross between ornatum and Stella Rosa. So cool parentage thing there. You never really know if that's completely true unless somebody's going to do all the genetics testing. But either way, it is a high intense pink lace leaf.
It makes me think, though, the people who introduced this is Ghirardelli Nursery in Italy. And they did do some weird, unique hybrids with Summer Gold and Jordan. Mm-hmm. We know that Summer Gold and Jordan, we've been told, are sister seedlings. Jordan being a Shirasawa listed, and Summer Gold being listed as a palmatum. And supposedly there was some hybrid work they did there. So you wonder, did they do any hybrid work with Stella Rosa and ornatum to really get this plant? I mean, you got to think, well, maybe they did after all these other cool plants you've seen that they've done that look clearly like some sort of hybrid. But the thing I like about pink filigree is it gives you some of the most pink, intense colors on the new growth on an ornatum style. And when you get that, you get an extremely colorful lace leaf that just keeps giving you color all throughout the spring, throughout the summer, and some really good fall color.
Yeah, now the summer color can fade to a bit of a green, especially if you have some sun, you're going to have pink overlays over top of that. So you get some bright pink flushes. Now, it's a fiery orangey red in the fall as well. So you get a high intensity for that fall color, but it's a fun plant in any season. Again, because of all these colors, it makes a great one for the container garden. You can put this on a patio planter. As always, make sure you have great drainage on any of your patio planters. But it's a great way to add to your collection, especially if you already have a green lace leaf or a red lace leaf and you're looking to intensify that diversity and really bring the eye in. Think about pink filigree as a great way to add to that color.
Guys, coming in at number 29. We're getting down this list. We went from 50 down to 29. We've got a selection by Esfeld Nursery. And we're coming up with Acer palmatum coral pink.
Yeah, again, not to be confused with coral magic. Coral pink is its own distinct cultivar and also not a coral bark. So I like this one because it's a little bit more of that soft pink, especially when it first leaves out. Really some excellent light white pink coloration on this one. I would definitely recommend a little bit more shade to hold that color and to get some of those more highly intense white pink colors.
Now, this was found as a chance seedling at Arboretum Calmute by Jelena. Many of y'all may think that name sounds familiar, Jelena. That's because they introduced Hamamelis Jelena at Arboretum Calmute, an amazing plant. And then Core was able to get this plant that they found, coral pink, and introduce it. And it gives you some of those bright baby pinks, those light pinks. We're not talking like the hot pink, but we're talking more on that baby pink spectrum that really grabs your attention.
Yeah, I've actually been to Arboretum Calmute with Core Van Gelderen. Great experience. I went there with the Maple Society, and Jelena and Diane are both witch hazels named there in that collection. We went in the fall, so the witch hazels weren't really in bloom, but a great time to see some of the Japanese maples in spectacular color. And you can see from those older genetics, there were so many old, mature Japanese maples in Arboretum Calmute. Acer Shirasawa Calmute comes from there. There's some really cool genetics there, and it's no shocker that they found this incredible seedling and named it Coral Pink because of all the different trees they have there. It's a forest of mature, older Japanese maples.
So guys, coming at number 28, we've got Acer palmatum Phoenix. This is a plant that gives you some really nice salmon pinks in the springtime, and the color pink that this puts on in the spring is unlike many of the other Japanese maples. It was one of the very first Japanese maples that we were able to really capture some of the best spring color on when we first started getting a DSLR camera. And because of that, it's one of those plants that I just love to go out and photograph each and every time. I mean, the coral pinks on Phoenix in the spring rise from the winter with this amazing pink color that you think of as like this fiery pink, and perfect name with the name Phoenix.
Yeah, I always like to let people know there are two Japanese maples with the name Phoenix. There is an Acer conspicuum X Phoenix that has a high intense snake bark with pink bark. We're actually talking about the palmatum here. Awesome tree to be growing. I think another one that's underrated for bonsai. I always talk to my bonsai guys, and I'm no bonsai expert, but if you're really highly sought after for Desojo, consider Phoenix. I mean, similar leaf shape, similar leaf size, high intensity pink. And you're going to get all the rootability and all the characteristics for air layering that you like with Desojo and Binishainga with Phoenix, but just a different color palette. This one, again, is another one that benefits from that secondary color. Typically, the heart of the leaf, the eye of the leaf, is an intense yellow, and you can actually kind of get some shrimp pink on the new growth. So you get this high intensity of diversity within the leaf. I mean, it's pink, but I think the yellows make that pink just a little more pink.
I would agree with you. I mean, it's one that I've always loved because of how it stood out. I always loved because of its intensity in the spring. And, you know, sometimes on some of these trees that are in this Corallinum group, as I often call them, because they give that spring color in the spring. Sometimes with those color groups, if they're coming from our nursery in Western North Carolina, where they've went through their dormancy and they're going to a hotter climate, they may leaf out a little earlier and not give you the same intensity of the pink. But don't worry, as your plant gets established in the landscape and gets larger and older, it's going to continually give you a better and better pink color on that tree.
Okay, so coming in here at number 27, it's getting hot and heavy. These are some good ones, guys. Coming in here at number 27, we got Acer palmatum Abigail Rose.
Guys, Abigail Rose is a selection by Harold Johnson of Alabama. He actually had Abigail Rose, and he had a sister seedling, which he sent to Talon Buckholz, which was Squiddy. And he said, oh, this is a Squiddy little thing, and Talon introduced Squiddy as well. But Abigail Rose is a selection born in the South. It was born in the deep South, where Harold Johnson was in lower Alabama. And it really is like a Higashiyama style with a very dwarf compact habit. We loved all the history behind plants like this, and we actually went to go try to visit Harold, and unfortunately he passed away shortly before we were able to go visit. But we were able to go down later and go visit Colonel Parker. And at Colonel Parker's house, he has the original Abigail Rose. And getting to see the original Abigail Rose was just a thing of history to me. I mean, getting to see that plant, you know, I think we even visited it when it was out of leaf. But to me, whenever you see those plants and you know the plant, you can even see the plant with the leaves on them when you think about it in your memory. And it's such an amazing plant to see something that's Abigail Rose that is now all around the world. It's one of Harold's most important introductions. And I think he also introduced Binishainga, and that's probably his most popular introduction. But right behind it is Abigail Rose.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of this one, guys. That original tree was probably only around 6 feet and it was probably close to 40 years old. So this one is more of a true dwarf. You know, we list it as 6 foot, 5 to 6 foot, even in 10 years. So think of this one as a more compact, denser form. You do get some kind of irregular branching going on this one too, which is kind of cool. But it's one of the most pink of that Higashiyama style variegations too. So not only does it have that reticulated interest that is, of that kind of Higashiyama family, if you will, it has some of the best pink shades of any of those. I mean, sometimes Higashiyama can be a little bit more purple. Abigail Rose consistently is a soft, bright, whitish pink with green veining. And then you kind of get like some lime green to yellow underneath that. So there's a ton of colors going on, even when there's one leaf. So you hear us say this a lot, but we're talking about high intensity, flashy plants on this list. This one is a photographer's dream. You're going to get great photography going on this one. One of the photos I know we use is our late friend Ronnie Myers had this in his garden, and some shades of pink on that are just unreal. I look at these pictures and I think to myself every year, how are we not doing more of this one? We need to be producing more of it every single time I see it. I have several different friends who have daughters named Abigail, so I do hand this one out to people because that name's coming back a good bit. So I have buddies with Abigails for daughters, so I think that might be part of its popularity. That name's really kind of hit again, but it has that subtle softness to it. It's a very durable plant. It's extremely durable, but it has a delicacy to the leaf that makes it so interesting.
So guys, coming in at number 26, we've got Mama Maple's favorite Japanese maple, one of her favorite Japanese maples, Acer palmatum Binishainga.
Now, the name Binishainga means red and changeful. Now, you may know MrMaple was named after my father. We had people around our local area when my dad was selling at tailgate markets. They called my dad Mr. Maple, and that's where our name comes from. But the dot in the MrMaple.com logo comes from our mom. Our mom, Evelyn, a huge influence on everything we do here. And her Binishainga has always been her favorite plant there in the garden. So the dot in the MrMaple.com is for mom. And that's Binishainga. I actually took a picture of a tree at a garden show back on like a blackberry. And that's what our logo is. But awesome tree. Binishainga leaves out some intense shades of pink on green. Now, if you're giving this one a little bit more morning sun, you can really intensify that pink. Now, this tree does fade to a little bit more like butterfly midsummer. So it's easy to confuse this one with butterfly. If you're looking at them in June, both are going to be kind of a cream on mint coloration. Pretty nice in the fall too, because you get a darker red on a softer red variegated fall leaf as well.
Yeah, and Binishainga is one of those plants that can revert. So if you see a solid green foliage, we do recommend pruning those out. The variegations do not come back on Binishainga if it starts throwing on some reversion. So it and butterfly are two types that I do recommend pruning out any reversions immediately whenever you see them in a tree. But Binishainga is one of those plants that gives you some unreal pink margins on a Japanese maple that are unreal and unlike many of the other selections. I mean, for that margin variegation, that is that style similar to butterfly, Binishainga gives you a very consistently pink border to it that lasts much longer through the season than something like butterfly.
Had to have Mama Maple's favorite tree here on the list. Guys, we've counted it down from 50 to 26. Let us know if you agree with our selections. Let us know if these are your favorite pink cultivars, what you think are the most pink cultivars, and tune in for part 2 next week, where we'll be counting down the top 25 bright pink Japanese maples. There's some crazy shades of pink. Japanese maples are flashy plants. So amongst Japanese maples, I would say there's some of the best shades of pink in the entire plant world.
So guys, you can catch us next week. Same bat time, same bat channel on your favorite podcast platform. Make sure you go in and give us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate it. More people can actually find us if you give us a 5-star review. That's a great way to help, support our channel. The other way is by shopping on MrMaple.com. And remember, we add daily content on our YouTube channel. So the Mr. Maple Show on YouTube, you can go subscribe there as well. And you'll catch daily content with videos on all types of things, all about Japanese maples.
Guys, we love doing this talk show for you and providing this content. We really appreciate you being part of our Maple Mafia by subbing. Anywhere you find us, it means the world to us. You guys make it so much fun, and definitely be looking for part 2 to this. I think it's going to be even more highly debated. The top 25 pink Japanese maples. We love doing these lists. We did one for the top variegated Japanese maples. There may be some more color content like that coming. We love breaking it down, debating these amongst ourselves, and we hope it sparks a conversation with you and opens your eyes up to more interesting Japanese maples. Now, if we've talked about trees here today and you don't see them currently on our website, You can always sign up to get notified via email whenever they're back in stock on MrMaple.com. And again, check our weekly listings. We add new plants every single Tuesday.
Guys, thanks so much for listening. Take care.
God bless.
And have an awesome day.